So Jamie is head of the International Research Method at Kantar Public. He works on the development and implementation of numerous large-scale multinational surveys. Most recently, he has been part of a core team within Kantar Public responsible for building Public Voice, a pan-European probability-based panel. And I would imagine that at this time, that's probably a very pertinent activity to be involved in. In any case, Jamie, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Harry. Can you hear me okay?
Sure.
My colleague Tanja and I are going to present this, but Tanja couldn't make it. She might be on the call now, but we decided just in case we would record this session. So I'm going to play the recording if that's all right with you, and then take questions afterwards. Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to this presentation. I'm Jamie, and I'll be presenting with Tanja, my colleague from Kantar. Kantar Public is a global research company, and in the last couple of years, we've built up a probability-based, predominantly online panel. This was built during at the start of the pandemic and over the last couple of years, and we're still continuing to build it now. So what we'll predominantly focus on is the processes we went through to build the panel. We'll be writing a technical report, which we'll publish in late April, which will provide more information on the recruitment response rates, the join rates to the panel, and panel profiles as well. Okay, so let's start with the presentation. So the format of this presentation is going to be a brief discussion of what is public voice. Then we'll talk about the geographical coverage and the coverage within each country. Then we'll go on to discuss about building public voice, best practice, pilots and rollout in each country. We then talk about the important aspect of harmonisation. So this isn't just a probability panel in one country, but it's across Europe, so it needs to be harmonised. And obviously automation is key to the success of this panel. We'll then talk a little bit about panel quality, but like I say, more of that will be fed into the technical report delivered in late April. And then finally, we'll discuss next steps and our expansion plans. Public Voice is Europe's largest probability-based mixed mode panel. Sample designs are all using offline modes of data collection, whether that's telephone, push to web, or face-to-face. Panelists are recruited to take part predominantly online, but they can also choose to take part by telephone, an offline mode of data collection. In terms of panel care, there's attractive incentives for their time, typically between 5 and 15 euros, depending on the length of the questionnaire. And we manage their workload, so we typically don't send them more than one survey a month. Information required to calculate design weights and calculate calibration weights to population targets are also captured at the time of data collection. So where does Public Voice cover at the moment in Europe? Well, you can see from the map here the countries that we can actually cover. We've got panels we've built bespoke for Public Voice in Belgium, Czechia, France, Germany, Greece, Ireland, Luxembourg, Portugal, Slovakia, and the United Kingdom. We're also in the process this year of building 2 more panels, one in Spain and one in Poland. And then we have some legacy panels. Now, these are panels that were not part of the Public Voice recent build in the last couple of years, but they're panels we've had in existence for a number of years now. So now we're going to talk about country coverage, the frames we used to draw the samples in each of the countries. Now, these offline frames were either RDD frames or address frames or population registers. Typically, because of COVID, we were unable to do much face-to-face recruitment. So the types of recruitment we tended to do were either a push-to-web postal recruitment or a push-to-web telephone recruitment.
The frames we used covered more than 95% of the adult population. That's the 16 plus population. All panelists were recruited via an offline mode of data collection using these frames. And examples of the frames that we did use, so in the United Kingdom we used an address register, PAF address register, because we used a mixed mode data collection for recruitment from face-to-face and a push-to-web postal approach. In Poland we're using a push-to-web postal approach, and we're also testing face-to-face recruitment, and in that country we used the population register PESEL. And in France, we also did both face-to-face and telephone recruitment. And for the face-to-face, we used the address register La Poste. In terms of the countries where we used a push-to-web telephone approach, the frames there are all RDD frames. And we either used a dual frame RDD or a single mobile RDD frame. The choice of which was sort of dependent on the dual phone penetration. In countries with fairly high dual phone penetration, we tended to use a dual frame RDD design, because we know from previous work we've done that the people who have both a mobile and a landline phone, their propensity to respond is quite different. So actually making sure you can contact them by both telephone types, a mobile and a landline, increases representation. The RDD samples were not screened prior to issuing them into field, because we found that screening can reduce the coverage. The offline population, as we said before, can join the panel and are covered via offline modes of data collection. Building public voice was a four-phased approach to recruitment. Essentially, in each country, we had to consider which offline mode of data collection we were going to use. For example, using face-to-face or a push-to-web approach requires you to have a population register ideally, or if not, an address register. Now, those aren't necessarily available in all countries, and certainly a population register is often not available unless you have an academic partner. We also had to look at the cost to build the panel. Face-to-face would obviously be the most expensive, but does it actually warrant that expense because it's better quality as well? What is the impact of lower response rates with the other modes on the representation of the data? We then went on to piloting a number of different approaches in each country. And when we were piloting it, we were looking at sort of three key factors: representation of the responding of the panelists, the costs associated with recruiting a panelist, and then also obviously related to that, the response rates at recruitment, panel joiner and survey participation. We also looked at different incentive levels and sample frames and fieldwork materials to get a sense of test and learn. Essentially, what were the best, would an additional €5 incentive increase our response rates? If so, how much by? Do different sample frames offer higher response rates, for example, a population register versus an address frame? Finally, once we'd decided on the most applicable approach for that country, we then went to the rollout and rolled out the recruitment phase in batches, but these were specifically recruitment to public voice. We weren't piggybacking on any other surveys. These were specific recruitment surveys. For the recruitment phase, we spent a lot of time speaking to experts in the field and reading quite a lot of academic papers and technical reports from other companies or institutions that had built probability-based panels. We diluted this information to a number of key areas in terms of what were best practice. One we've already discussed, which is about high quality sample frames, but we also wanted to look at how we maximize contact with the selected sample. So we had a multi-contact fieldwork strategy, And we also ensured that contacts were made at different times of the day and days of the week when people were most likely to be at home. We also included incentives to motivate people to take part. These are currently conditional incentives. We're going to be testing unconditional incentives later on. And typically they range from €5 to €10 for agreeing to join the panel. But once they're on the panel, it will vary depending on the length of the survey, typically between €5 and €15. There's also this aspect of a mode switch. So moving from an offline mode to an online mode does lead to attrition. So how do we mitigate for that attrition? Well, Tanja will talk about this, but we basically developed a streamlined process whereby they're sent the profile in question almost in real time. And then the recruitment materials, leveraging information about best practice in terms of social exchange, topic interests, and economic need, and what we write in there was also, and how it looks was also leveraged. In terms of the rollout of public voice, we've got over 74,000 active panelists that we've built up over the last 2 years across 11 countries. We've also got 2 countries where we're in the build phase, that's Poland and Spain. We've got another 4 countries where we're building panels in collaboration with non-Kantar partners, where these panels are going to be probability-based panels that meet our quality requirements. We've also got the legacy panels in the Nordics and Baltics. So if we take those all together, there's only 5 countries in Europe now where we're not actually able to cover with a probability-based panel. Tanja will talk about our strategy for covering those later on, but this just gives you an overview of the panel size in each of the countries. I'll now hand you over to Tanja, who will talk more about harmonization.
Harmonization is a defining feature of comparative surveys, and the strategy to improve comparability of the data collected across different populations or periods of time is paramount to public voice because of its broad geographical scope and to ensure it meets the high-level requirements of a gold standard data collection platform it is expected to meet. To this end, we have developed the Public Voice Governance Framework, which serves 2 key purposes. The public voice panels are commercial panels and they need to serve local market needs, while following global best practice governed by a set of protocols to ensure a probability-based design on the one hand, and comparability and compatibility with the centrally designed panel systems. The profiling questionnaire is one important area to illustrate how the public voice governance framework has been translated into practice. So the profiling questionnaire is the same in each country. It uses the same concepts and definitions, uses common classifications such as ISCAT, NATS, etc. It records the same set of characteristics in each country while allowing ad hoc country modules. The proposed approach follows Eurostat best practice for implementing a harmonized and decentralized data collection approach, and for example, the Labor Force Survey, EU Silk, and other Eurostat surveys have been looked at when this framework was built. Therefore, the questionnaire caters to both the local market needs and ensures that the questions specific to the market are asked, but also assures that comparability is in place. To ensure that public voice is a future-proof solution, we've built automation to support it, and this automation serves multiple purposes. It ensures a smooth respondent journey, an efficient process, and supports the implementation of multi-country projects on public voice. To minimize attrition, for example, when switching modes during recruitment, we've designed an end-to-end automation taking the individual from the initial offline recruitment interview through the onboarding process and into the panel, and this is what this slide presents. This process can be completed in near real time for telephone recruitment and push-to postal recruitment, while for face-to-face, it can happen as soon as the interviewer uploads from their mobile device, which we ask them to do on the same day. Consenting individual contact details, such as telephone numbers, email addresses, etc., are collected at recruitment and validated in real time through APIs, making it possible for the individual to receive an SMS invite or an email to join the panel and complete the profiling questionnaire as soon as they have finished the recruitment survey. This process applies to onliners only, while for all offliners, we have a separate process where they are called separately or they're sent a postal questionnaire to complete the profiling survey. Where the individual has not completed the profiling survey within a given time frame, the system is designed to send reminders such as SMS or email with varying content at each reminder. For those that complete the profiling questionnaire, they become a full panel member, and the process to award the incentive is automatically triggered. The incentive is available in real time at survey completion for them. For those that do not take the profiling survey and join the panel, we are in the process of reviewing our strategies to re-engage with them. These are likely to include targeted higher incentive for those that we underrepresent on the panel and alternative offline contact approaches to nudge them to join. Still on automation. On the previous slide, we touched upon the contact strategy, and now we can take a closer look at how a multi-channel contact strategy can be automated with our systems. Where an individual has been selected to participate, they receive an email invitation and SMS if they've provided that contact detail. The email message and SMS would welcome them to the survey, provide a brief overview of what it is, in line with the communication strategies developed by our behavioral insights team, and will clearly display the way to access the survey link. To limit the barriers to participation, it is key to limiting attrition and encourage response. And the email invite will contain a clickable button which announces the possibility to take the survey by saying, click here to take the survey, for example. The link to the surveys are fully personalized, and we have a unique survey link per individual invited to the survey. They are tagged with a unique identifier, and the link serves two purposes. It allows the respondent to enter the survey securely, but also equally important, it allows us to link the respondent to the overall gross sample unit. Respondents will be able to log in multiple times to resume the survey if they would like to. Once respondents have completed the survey, they are redirected to a survey landing page, which would display a message of appreciation for them taking the time to complete the survey and provide them with a redirection link for the incentivization platform. However, if the person does not complete the survey, after the initial invite, the automated contact strategy will kick off, and at the assigned waiting time, as shown here on the slide, the person would receive a reminder respecting the multi-channel contact strategy, and then the reminder will automatically stop once the survey is completed. Moving on from automation, the next aspect I'd like to talk about is the panel quality and the quality assurance framework we have in place to ensure that we reach that ambition of public voice being a high quality panel. So the first aspect of that quality assurance is a strong data provenance, where by design we ensure all the information needed to calculate design weights, response rates at all stages of selection is available and it's fully documented. Another key aspect is that we fully eliminate the risk of bogus respondents having an influence on the survey metric. In public voice surveys, only respondents that have been selected as part of the original recruitment can take part. The quality assurance of the data collection is also quite key. So, for example, we give each individual which is selected sufficient opportunity to respond at every stage of the selection. We quality assure the data that we collect, and I'll expand on that in a second. And we also reduce the risk of panel conditioning because we allow public voice respondents to take a survey once a month or once every 2 months. In terms of the data quality, this is quite key because public voice is a self-completion method. So in self-completion interviews, they are susceptible to satisficing and other non-desirable respondent behaviors. So below is a non-exhaustive list of data checks that we're normally looking at. One is the use of non-informative response options such as don't know and prefer not to say. And based on the surveys that we've conducted, we observe that the proportion of respondents who select this option for a quarter of their replies is negligible. So it's really under 0.5% or less. Where we have multiple replies questions, we've conducted and where we've conducted a parallel run study face-to-face and online, we've compared the proportion of these respondents selected by online respondents on public voice and face-to-face respondents, and the results are encouraging because public voice respondents select as many or a higher proportion of items on these questions compared to a face-to-face respondent. Speeding is also a criteria that we normally look at, and that's defined as completing a survey in 40% or under the median response time, and we observe that behavior in less than 0.5% of respondents in a survey. A few words about what's next. At the minute, we're working on a comprehensive technical document, and that document will include the background research informing the panel design, the pilot testing we did in each of the countries, and the final panel design that we settled for. We will describe the panel management software we're using, the public voice governance frameworks that we mentioned earlier. We will document the panel quality and the panel profile for each country. We also have a few research initiatives, and one of them is to test the effectiveness of letters, SMS reminders, phone reminders, and emails as a way to optimize the contact strategy. And then another work stream we plan is to test the use of differential incentives as one strategy to mitigate for non-response bias. Finally, a market expansion roadmap is being developed in line with the demand that we've seen on the market. Thanks for watching. If you would like to get more information about public voice, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us.